Kao Cen Darach was a renowned member of the Jedi Order in the years of the Old Republic, before the return of the Sith Empire. Darach eventually gained the title of Battle Master, a title that can only be earned by those Jedi who have mastered all 7 forms of lightsaber combat and are hardened warriors of the Order, with many combat kills to their name. Sometime afterward, Darach was sent to the ancient Sith home world of Korriban. There, he received Satele Shan as his apprentice to complete her Jedi training. During the recapture of the orbital space station around Korriban, Darach and Satele engaged the Sith Lord Vindican, alongside his own apprentice, Malgus. Satele Shan, at Darach's request, fled the fight. Darach, however, remained, to cover his allies' retreat and face the Sith Lords alone. Though Darach defeated Vindican, Vindican's apprentice Malgus slew him on the Korriban station. Despite this, Darach was a great warrior of the Old Republic and a true battle master of the Order. Darth Maul was born on the planet Dathomir, 54 years before the Battle of Yavin. His mother, hoping to save him from a life of servitude, gave him to Darth Sidious. Darth Sidious, in turn, had him trained, and pushed him to the limits of his physical and mental capabilities. Ultimately, Darth Maul became an extremely proficient Sith warrior and assassin, and has killed several notable Jedi such as Anum Bandara and Qui-Gon Jinn. However, on an unfortunate trip to Naboo, Darth Maul was defeated by the young Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi. From there, Darth Maul spent 10 years on Lothal Minor until his brother, Savage Opress, came and found him. After Darth Maul recovered his memory and received a new set of cybernetic legs, he went on a rampage, ultimately forcing Darth Sidious himself to put an end to his plans. After a vicious lightsaber duel, Savage Opress was killed, and Darth Maul was captured to serve a dark purpose in later years. Kao Cen Darach was a Zabrak male of about middle age. Being a Zabrak, Darach's physical strength and speed would go far beyond what most humans could achieve. Although Darach's loss to Malgus was due almost entirely to his lack of physical endurance, he was pitted against a very effective master and apprentice team for an extended period of time. Aside from this, there is very little to say about Darach's physical capabilities, simply because they seem to be the standard. Darth Maul was a Zabrak male of 34 years of age at the time of his defeat at Sidious's hands, and in my opinion, reached the physical heights of his species. Darth Plagueis described Maul's hands and feet to be as dangerous as his lightsaber. Darth Maul was so effective in unarmed combat that he has even bested a Wampa without his lightsaber and without the use of the Force, not even for physical augmentation. He simply defeated it with pure brute strength. During Darth Maul's years as a Sith, he has been beaten, battered, broken, and cut in half, and yet he survived it all. Anything less than a killing blow will not do. However, it should be taken into consideration that Darth Maul did spend 10 years on Lothal Minor, which probably negatively affected his physical capability. Now, we must take Darth Maul's cybernetic legs into consideration. For the majority of combatants, I see cybernetic legs as an advantage, thanks to both their durability and their strength. However, in the case of Darth Maul, he was already in such amazing physical condition that I don't know how many benefits there would be to giving him cybernetic legs, although I certainly don't see this as a disadvantage. Although Darach is a capable physical combatant, Darth Maul completely blows him out of the water in this field. Darth Maul has superior strength, speed, and agility, and can take more damage. However, the best comparison are their respective defeats. Darth Maul at the hands of Obi-Wan, and Kao Cen Darach at the hands of Malgus. Maul survived his wounds. Darach did not. Maul takes the physical edge. Kao Cen Darach wielded a single-bladed green lightsaber alongside a set of Jedi battle armor. Although the battle armor was capable of turning aside a light hit from a lightsaber, it provided no benefits against any dedicated assault. Darth Maul's weapon of choice was a standard red-bladed saber staff, the emitters of which could be selectively activated to only have one blade out at a time if he so chose. My general opinion on saber staffs is that they are superior to the standard lightsaber if they are wielded with the same amount of skill. However, in the novel Darth Bane Path of Destruction, it describes the saber staff as a more limited weapon. That in turn means that if you have a large amount of knowledge with or against a saber staff, you can easily use that knowledge against your opponent. Also, there is a much greater danger of a saber staff being destroyed compared to a standard lightsaber. However, Darth Maul has proven himself extremely capable of using his saber staff as a single-bladed lightsaber with an elongated hilt. Although Kao Cen Darach's Jedi battle armor might only be of limited use, it's still better than nothing. Therefore, Kao Cen Darach takes the equipment edge. Darth Maul was one of the most dangerous duelists of his era, with his chosen forms of combat being Naiman, Jar-Kai, Ataru, Zhuya, and Teräs Käsi. Naiman was a form about moderation over power, taking bits and pieces from all previous lightsaber forms. It also heavily emphasized integrating force abilities into lightsaber sequences. Naiman also came with training in Jar-Kai dual-blade fencing, which was the primary reason why Maul studied Naiman to begin with, even Darth Plagueis considering him a master of the technique. Ataru is an aggressive form, based around acrobatic and flamboyant blade work. However, as described in the Jedi Path, Form 4 is exhausting and is best employed in short, devastating bursts, so the old and the crippled need not apply, unless you're Yoda. Zhuya is an extremely aggressive form, based around drawing from your emotions to create a chaotic and overwhelming series of attacks. Teräs Käsi was an unarmed martial arts discipline based around anticipating strikes, even giving non-force users the ability to predict where their opponent will attack. When Maul is fighting offensively, he tries to overwhelm his opponent with a flurry of strikes. Using the principles of Zhuya, he would create an aggressive and chaotic attack pattern that would be very difficult to defend against, acting as an offensive hurricane that never lets up. Defensively, Maul was capable, holding his own against two Ataru Masters and Lord Sidious himself. Tactically, Maul preferred to plan his fights out ahead, as when he drew Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan into a ray-shielded area where he knew he could separate them. Another good example is whenever Darth Maul used the killing of innocents to draw Obi-Wan out, and then used Savage Opress to ambush him. Clearly, Maul does prefer to plan his fights out ahead. However, he is not dependent upon it, and is quite capable of fighting effectively without a ready-made plan. For instance, he was able to very effectively combat Darth Sidious without any prearranged plan on Mandalore. Ultimately, Darth Maul could compete with many of the greats of his era, and truly deserves to be called a force to be reckoned with. Kao Cen Darach was one of the most capable warriors of his day. Being a battle master, he clearly had at least teaching knowledge of all 7 forms of lightsaber combat. Although his preferred form is not confirmed in any source, We can deduce from his capability in Jarkai dual blade fencing and his easy integration of force abilities into his lightsaber sequences that he preferred Nyman. As mentioned previously, Nyman is a form based around moderation over power. Because Nyman takes bits and pieces from all previous lightsaber forms, it is characterized by having no strengths or weaknesses. Kao Cen Darach trained with Nyman, specializing in the form, and he took it to a level where, rather than having no strengths and no weaknesses, he had nothing but strengths. Offensively, Kao Cen Darach would apply dynamic footwork and direct assaults to try to outmaneuver and pummel through his opponents. Defensively, Darach was capable of stonewalling Lord Vindican and his apprentice Malgus. Although later in the fight, his defenses were penetrated by Malgus, it seems to me that this was much more of a physical issue rather than any lack of skill. Using the principles of Nyman, whenever Darach was on the offense, he never fully committed, and whenever he was on the defense, he was always trying hard to fight back at his opponents. Using these principles, he would ride the ebb and flow of battle and wait for his opponent to make a mistake. Then, he would strike with deadly efficiency. Ultimately, what truly made Kao Cen Darach a dangerous opponent was his creativity and his tactical ingenuity. The best example being whenever he took the saber staff that he was using as a single-bladed lightsaber and activated the secondary emitter into Lord Vindican's chest. Truly, Darach deserves to be called a great warrior of the Old Republic. Both Darth Maul and Kao Cen Darach were some of the best duelists of their respective eras. Offensively, Darth Maul's flood of attacks is superior to Kao Cen Darach's more moderate offensive approach. Defensively, both Darth Maul and Kao Cen Darach were both capable of stonewalling their opponents with great efficiency. Darth Maul whenever he was facing Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, and Kao Cen Darach whenever he was facing Lord Vindican and Darth Malgus. However, in a longer-term engagement, Darth Maul's physicality would allow him to fight for much longer than Kao Cen Darach. Defensively, I would give Maul a slight edge, however, since he was also able to stonewall Sidious for a short period of time. Ultimately, Darach's defenses were penetrated by Malgus, whether it be a physical issue or not. Although in the fight on Naboo, Maul's defenses were penetrated in much the same way, that was a case of arrogance, rather than any lack of skill. Tactically, these two individuals were entirely different. Darth Maul preferred to plan his fights out ahead, although he was far from reliant upon this. Kao Cen Darach, however, was entirely at home, improvising in any given situation. Ultimately, it's Darach's creativity and his ability to think on his feet that makes him the more tactically viable combatant. However, whenever looking at what both of these combatants bring to the table compared to one another, there is a clear distinction. Darth Maul has trained his entire life to become an incredible duelist, and he has faced many Blade Masters, and has either done very, very well, or defeated them, and many times killed them in battle. So, Kao Cen Darach really isn't bringing anything new to the table. However, Darach, when exhausted, has proven that he can be overwhelmed by a furious series of attacks, something that Darth Maul would easily be capable of doing even 15 minutes into the fight. For this reason, I give Darth Maul the dueling and martial arts edge. Part of the agreement between Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious was that Darth Maul would not be trained as a true apprentice. Therefore, his training in the Force was limited. However, he still possessed a primal and deep connection to the Force. Darth Maul used physical augmentation through the Force to take his already incredible physical ability to absolutely superhuman levels. With a single hit from his hands or bionic legs, he could break your bones or even shatter your neck. He could even resist the Force lightning of a Night Sister. although it clearly had its limits. Telekinetically, Maul would use Force Choke to strangulate his victims, and Force Push to pummel them and break their bones. On certain circumstances, Maul has displayed a significant magnitude with the Force, by throwing Obi-Wan across the room with a Force Push and bringing down a small ship off of a cliff. However, I think the first could be explained by Obi-Wan's unusually weak Force shield, and the second might be explained by Darth Maul's rage at his defeat. Tactically, Darth Maul always used the Force as a blunt instrument, as a secondary weapon. His true focus remained on the martial skills. In any case, Darth Maul was an extremely capable Force wielder nonetheless. Although Kao Cen Darach did not have a wide variety of skills, he used the skills that he did have to the greatest effect, both in magnitude and in creativity. Using physical augmentation, Kao Cen Darach could do the superhuman feats common to most Force wielders. Telekinetically, Kao Cen Darach could be a juggernaut. With a single Force push, he sent Lord Vendican flying. Also, later during the fight, Kao Cen Darach used telekinesis to send hundreds of pounds of debris hurtling towards Darth Malgus. Both of these feats was extremely impressive, particularly for someone who has dedicated their entire lives to studying the martial skills, rather than mastering the Force. While the magnitude that Darach displayed in combat was extremely impressive, his greatest advantage was his creativity in his use of the Force. For instance, whenever Lord Vendican shot Force Lightning at Kao Cen Darach, he sent it flying towards Malgus, rather than simply letting it dissipate into his blade. Another good example of Darach's creativity was whenever he was getting double-teamed by Vendican and Malgus, and rather than sending a Force push flying towards either of them, he simply sent a telekinetic blast into the ground, forcing them both back. Despite Darach's limited skill set, he was still able to use the Force in creative and effective ways. The fascinating thing when comparing Darth Maul and Kao Cen Darach's Force abilities is that they basically have the same skill set. Their only real Force options when competing against fellow Force wielders are telekinesis and physical augmentation. Physical augmentation provides the same benefits to both, therefore they cancel out. Their displays of magnitude with telekinesis are comparable, however I would give Kao Cen Darach a slight edge. However, Kao Cen Darach completely blows Darth Maul out of the water when it comes to creativity. Darth Maul views the Force as a secondary weapon, as an extra tool. Kao Cen Darach, on the other hand, does not. Kao Cen Darach can use the Force both to pummel his opponent or to off-balance them and make them make a mistake. It's his ability to use the Force in unexpected and creative ways that makes him the overall more viable Force wielder. Kao Cen Darach takes the Force ability edge. Here I will be giving a theoretical battle between Darth Maul and Kao Cen Darach. Let's say this fight took place in the forests of Yavin 4. Here is an example of how I think the fight would play out. Both Darach and Maul would start at a standstill, about 10 yards away from each other. After a tense couple of seconds, both combatants would ignite their lightsabers and begin the fight. Maul would be the aggressor, and launch into a furious series of attacks. Darach would defend capably, blocking or deflecting Maul's assault. However, the endless attacks would force Darach onto his back foot. Leaping backwards, Darach would send Maul flying with a Force push. Maul would be sent hurtling into a tree. However, his physicality would allow him to tank the damage. At this point, Maul would activate the secondary emitter on his saber staff, and once again go on the offensive. However, due to Darach's knowledge of the saber staff, he would launch a counterattack and meet Maul head-on. The battle would continue for several minutes, each opponent gaining and losing ground here and there. At this point, Darach would use the Force to send loose dirt and sand flying towards Maul's face, temporarily blinding him. And in that moment, Darach would, with a flick of his wrist, cut Maul's saber-staff in half. Fortunately for Maul, one side of his saber-staff would remain operational. Maul would recover quickly, leaping backwards, and clearing his eyes. Darach at this point would begin to tire, and, seeking to gain an advantage, would leap into the trees. Maul would follow him, continuing the assault. The duel would continue in the trees for several seconds. However, eventually Maul would land a blow on Darach, forcing him out of the trees. Darach would hit the ground on his feet. Darach, realizing that he would be exhausted and unable to continue, would muster everything that he had into one last forced throw, sending vines, logs, and sticks, anything that he could find towards Maul. Maul would evade, tank, or cut through anything that got to him. At this point, Maul would launch one last assault, and eventually overwhelm the tired Darach. And with this, I declare Darth Maul the victor. Of course, guys, this is just my opinion. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I intend to do many more of these, so if you guys could leave suggestions of ways for me to improve these videos and future matchups in the comment section below, I would really appreciate it. As I said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.